Boundless Authenticity Podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to the Boundless Authenticity Podcast, where we discuss everything related to the evolution of human consciousness. I need your help with something. According to the latest statistics, 68% of listeners are not following or subscribers to the show. And if you want me to be able to reach a larger audience so that I can get even more of the guests you want, we have to take action and like, subscribe, and follow wherever possible to tell that freaking algorithm that Boundless Authenticity means business. You can find all of the episodes on Spreaker, but you can also find some on Spotify, Apple, Rumble, BitChute, YouTube, or anywhere else you like to listen to podcasts. Anyways, today's guest is Chris Mathieu, a filmmaker, researcher, and the creator of the documentary Occult Louisiana, which delves into the rich mystical and paranormal traditions of Louisiana, examining topics like voodoo, magic, and the supernatural phenomena that are deeply woven into the state's cultural fabric. Chris is also the host of forbiddenknowledgenews on Spreaker, where I've also been featured as a guest. Links to that will be included. Chris, what's going on?
Hey, man, thank you so much for having me on. I really enjoyed our discussion when you were on my show, and I'm looking forward to this one as well. Let's get weird.
Yeah, we definitely have to continue that discussion. There's so much more that we could get into with that stuff. But anyways, this is about you. So yeah, anybody that knows me or listens to this show knows that I hate watching television. I'm against it. You know what I talk about because we spoke about that. But it's a big deal for me to be like, hey, you know what? I'm going to check out this documentary. And I watched it. It was a 10 out of 10 solid. I was very interested in the information. It reminded me of stuff that I even heard of when I was studying Caribbean history, like Jean Lafitte and whatnot. But I'll let you take over. What was, what really made you decide, screw it, I'm going to make a documentary on this?
Well, thank you again for having me. I was born and raised in Louisiana, South Louisiana, a small town called Houma. It's about an hour south of New Orleans. And I lived there until I was about 23 years old. I moved to Florida for about 10 years. And then I moved back to Louisiana for another few years. I don't live there right now. I moved to Colorado a few years ago and started Forbidden Knowledge News out here. But, excuse me, I was just always interested in mysteries, paranormal, the unexplained, the occult, conspiracies. And that's the whole reason I started Forbidden Knowledge News. And I was inspired after a few psychedelic experiences, actually, to start producing films and documentaries. I've been involved with editing for my local news station a long time ago. I went to school for digital production, and I'm very familiar with editing and the whole process of filmmaking. And I decided, why not? And the question was, what would I make my documentary film about? And I knew I wanted to do a series of them. And there's so many topics that I cover. Honing in on the first one, I couldn't really think of anything until, like I said, I had inspiration through a magic mushroom experience to make a film about my home state, which is full of mystery and paranormal events and a rich history and all kinds of hidden information that I wasn't even aware of until I started researching. So I made a trip back to Louisiana. It was in, I think, April of 2023, I think it was in April 2023 or maybe 22. And I started filming. I started doing interviews and talking with different people and learning about all the local history and legends, at least what I didn't already know. And there was a lot that I didn't already know about my own state's history. So I took a deep dive into everything, found some incredible people with incredible experiences, and learned as much as I could about it. And the film covers everything from the hidden history behind Mardi Gras. We get into a little bit of the JFK assassination and some of the inner workings that took place in New Orleans. We also get into the history of Jean Lafitte and pirates, voodoo, and Marie Laveau, and a large portion of it is focused on one of my friend Scott Pace's experiences. He's a local hunter there, and he's had incredible encounters with what he understands as a Bigfoot, dogmen, and various other types of supernatural beings that could possibly exist out in the swamplands. So it's a wide variety of things that interested me in my home state, and I was really happy with how everything turned out. It's an extremely low budget film. I think we made the whole thing with less than $1,000, and I used things, all the equipment I already had, and a lot of the interviews that I've done, they were done over Zoom, and, we did as many as we could in person, but it's a really kind of different style of filmmaking, and I really enjoyed doing this. We are now working on our second film, which we're hoping to have submitted by January and released by March or April. And this one is going to be a continuation of the Forbidden documentary series. This one will be titled The Forbidden Documentary Doors of Perception. We're going to have Doors of Perception, Chapter 1 and 2. And this one is going to cover another wide variety of topics, but not specific to a certain area. It's going to be about the profound connections between near-death experiences, meditative states, altered states, psychedelics, and contact with other dimensional, otherworldly, non-human intelligences, and how it can form our material world and reality if we've experienced this, and change our lives in very profound ways, and how all these experiences are profoundly connected to each other once you start looking at a bigger picture of everything. So that's the new film we're working on, which we can get into a little bit if you'd like as well. But yeah, that's how it all got started, man.
Well, yeah. So less than $1,000, and it doesn't even watch like that. You can, you experience it the same way you would as something on like the History Channel or something,
Yeah, the most we spent was airfare and travel and food and stuff for the trip. So, and this one's really going to be on a budget of about the same thing. I mean, we have pretty decent cameras and microphones and everything. And, it's really not about a huge production value and eye candy and things like that. It's about the information that's in it and presenting it in a very entertaining way that is very engaging for the audience.
Okay, so let's tell the listeners a little bit on this. What key aspects of Louisiana's history and culture do you explore in the documentary, and how exactly do they connect to the occult?
Well, there's several things. I mean, JFK assassination is not necessarily connected to the occult on the surface, but if you dig deeper, there's plenty of rabbit holes that you can follow that lead to occult ideologies, but that's not really what we focus in the JFK assassination. That was just showing a glimpse of hidden history that you don't normally hear about, and occult really means hidden. So it's really about all the hidden things in Louisiana that that I wasn't aware of, that many people aren't aware of, and I thought it would be beneficial for everyone to start to learn about some of this history of this magical state. And, you can consider the voodoo practices occult, definitely. The magic and some of the paranormal history I would consider occult as well. And the whole atmosphere and the whole feeling, if you've ever been to Louisiana, there's just this mystical, magical feeling, undeniable, that you get in certain areas. And the deeper in the swamps that you go, you can feel this sense of, actually, it's like a sense of darkness and heaviness. There feels like there was a lot of trauma in the past in this state in a lot of the areas, and there was it was a very bloody history for Louisiana, a lot of negative and very anti-human things like slavery took place there. So it does have a dark history, a rich history, and a very occult and paranormal as well.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised. And when you said that it has that heavy energy, it reminds me of here where I live in Barbados. You go into the countryside or you're on the beaches at night and you feel those presences just waiting for you to kind of like talk to them or something, like you swear sometimes something's going to jump out at you. And I've even had experiences.
Oh yeah.
I've had experiences with like something I swear must have been like the dog man or something up in the countryside and just crossing the road like normal. The only thing this thing didn't do was wave at me. And so, yeah, I get it, and it resonated. And I know that there's a very strong Caribbean presence in Louisiana as well. So,
yeah. And as far as feeling presences and that there is this energy around you, I touched on it briefly, but I really didn't get into how much people sense these intelligences and spirits around them in different parts of the French Quarter, in New Orleans, in different areas of the swamp and historical places. There is a profound sense that even people witnessing, when going to a plantation in the front courtyard, they would see apparitions of people hanging in trees, slaves, and, some would be communicating with them. There's several instances, and I talked with plenty of psychics who have communicated with spirits around the area. In the certain area, in Pirates Alley, actually, in the French Quarter, there are reports that, women are being groped by otherworldly hands and things they can't see, and they're being felt up and, touched and things like this. So there's definitely this strong presence that can be felt in many places.
Yeah, that resonates with me. And you could tell too, the footage that you took, even though it might seem raw to some, it was raw enough to be authentic, and you could sense exactly the vibe of the place. So, $1,000 might not seem like a lot, but it was more than enough actually to catch the vibe,
Yeah. That's how I felt. I mean, I don't think it really takes a big production value to bring something quality to people. And I'm very excited about what's happening in the entertainment space in general. People are, like you, checking out from regular TV and Hollywood productions because it's not even about entertainment anymore. Hell, it's not even about them making money anymore. It's about propaganda and virtue signaling and trying to get people brainwashed, basically. So people are realizing that entertainment business, this old Hollywood model, and just utilizing the airwaves for mind control and propaganda purposes, they're starting to see that that's what it's all about. And we have this new wave of independent filmmakers and podcasters, and people are starting to just slide over to the more the more independent side because it's real. It's actually enjoyable. It's informative. It's entertaining. And it's not just about trying to get you to see some perspective on a political candidate or different anti-human ideologies that are pushed. It's just about real things that people enjoy and real information that can really benefit people. And I'm really excited to see the huge wave of people that are starting to kind of move out of that zombie mind control, just TV watching, couch potato phase. And also, there's a huge amount of people who are just starting their own businesses, starting their own production companies. And I think this is the time to do things like this because the old systems seem to be crumbling. People are rejecting the nonsense and they're looking for quality. And if you have anything quality to offer, now's the time to just put it on the table, I think.
Yeah, you're right. And you know how I feel about the whole thing. The biggest mistake they probably made was making the propaganda obvious. Before, if you could see a little bits of it, but it wasn't so bad, stuff was wholesome. I guess growing up in our generation, stuff was wholesome, so it reeled you in. But now it's just debauchery 24/7, and it's hard to find anything. So it's a good thing.
Yeah, it's so blatant. It almost seems like they're presenting this because they want us to be aware of it somehow. I don't know. Maybe they're tired of the bullshit themselves. Who knows? But it's very interesting how everything is unfolding and the awareness that people are having right now.
Yeah. So back to the film.
Yeah.
I mean, how does it really portray the relationship between, say, Louisiana's indigenous African and the French and Spanish cultures with the occult practices?
Well, I mainly focused on Marie Laveau when we touched on the voodoo, but it does get into voodoo history and some of the misinterpretations, some of the origins and roots of voodoo. But I really focus on Marie Laveau, her life, and some of the truer stories and that have been really not glamorized because they're not as exciting as some of the fictional things that you hear about. So that's what I really focused on. But as far as the ancient history of Louisiana, I forgot to mention this whole section of the film. I cover the mound builders of Louisiana. And I had Dr. Gregory Little on to discuss this part of the film. And it talks about our ancient past and how what we understand as the natives, there is older civilizations and possibly very advanced civilizations that were in this area that could have been part of a global civilization. And he believes it may even be a precursor to the pyramid builders, these advanced builders that built these mound structures across the Americas. They were used for astronomical, ceremonial purposes. And now if you look at them, they just look like little hills or mounds. But it is speculated that back during those times, they were very sophisticated construction and they served dual purposes that were beyond what we thought humans were capable of at that time. He also believes that they could have been connected to the ancient giants, the Nephilim, and these could have been responsible for building these structures. There's connections with the elongated skulls as well. And I go into how there were multiple giant bones excavated from these sites in the late 1800s, and you won't hear about it from any mainstream, but there's tons of newspaper articles that were found that are stating that these 10 to 15 foot skeletons were found, and the tallest you'll hear from mainstream accounts is maybe 6, 7, 7.5 feet tall. But they were much larger. They were finding much larger skeletons all over the Americas associated with these specific mound sites. And that is what we really focused on when we go really far back into Louisiana history. And this is something else I consider is occulted and hidden because our mainstream archaeology and our mainstream science is really having a tough time admitting how old some of these things are and the possibilities that are being discovered by independent researchers. The mounds at LSU campus were recently redated, and they could be over, I believe it's 12,000 years old, and could possibly predate some of the Egyptian megaliths. So it's very, very fascinating, some of the information that I've uncovered and shared in this documentary about the ancient past.
Yeah, the whole documentary really does have this atmosphere of mystery and intrigue. And when you talk about things like the connection with the JFK assassination, it gets even hairier because who would have thought? I mean, mainstream ideas that are typically considered conspiracy theory don't go that direction. But then you see the connection to like the mob and all that, and he documented all that stuff. And then, the things about the mounds and whatnot, it it sucks you into that reality, and it makes you question things because who would have thought? And nobody can deny it because you have the footage and it's like right there in your face too. So it's not like they can say, oh, that's not real. They made that up. It's right there in front of your face.
Yeah. The problem is people are so programmed to bow to authority, to believe the quote unquote experts out there. And it's hard for them to understand how controlled these institutions are, and the foundation, the information is so bad, and it's been altered so many times over the years. But it's hard for a lot of people to see that, because they don't want to think that their whole life is a lie, that everything that they've been programmed to believe is a falsehood, and that our history is maybe completely different than we understand from mainstream academia. More and more people like Graham Hancock, different wonderful researchers are, Matt LaCroix, many others that are really uncovering truths about the possibilities with our ancient past. And I don't think that in our near future, the old information can hold as much weight anymore. And I don't see that it could stand as, for too much longer with all the wonderful independent research that's coming out.
Yeah, you're right about that. And Matt LaCroix is definitely genius level. And he's a very believable character too. So it's a good thing that you have people like him that are out there that are being genuine and honest. And then it's crazy because then you find out exactly how much stuff has just been destroyed. And then when you hear that, you're like, okay, so yeah, they're hiding something, because what does somebody that doesn't want to be found out do? They want to cover their tracks. And a lot of the times it's done sloppily in a hurry. So you can still find those little bits and pieces, that kind of sell you
even
out.
Unfortunately, the best independent researchers have limited information to go off of, especially with anything having to do with our past. The origins of the information is usually written by the leaders or the most powerful of that era, or the victors of the era, and the stories are written to suit them. But there is plenty of true and information out there, but it's getting harder and harder to access some of these things just because of our cancel culture, the way the internet has been just deleting random things. So I think that it's, even the best independent researcher has limited information to go off of, and we have to take everything with a grain of salt. But I do believe it's important to present all the possibilities, because it's like a puzzle. You can't really put anything together unless you see what the outcome should be in a bigger picture of everything. And I think that right now we're starting to see a bigger picture of a lot of these things, but we have to get past the programming part and the blind trust of people that don't have our best interest in mind.
Yeah, I can't stress enough to people the importance of turning off the television and actually having a life, have an interest in things. Everybody's interested in something. And the thing about it is that there are so many people out there that they come to me, for example, and then they realize, wow, so now I have all this time. I've started reading, and I just realized that stuff that I was into when I was a kid, or stuff that I read about, I'm still interested in that. And it takes them down these rabbit holes, and it's a beautiful thing. That's how you get involved in actually living your life, by becoming an investigator. And I think that, like you said, with the cancel culture and all the scare tactics that the media has, they try to make you feel bad if you are interested in anything other than what they say, But all of that's going to fall away soon, because fortunately, there's people like me out there and people like you that are asking questions and encourage people to just go take a look, But you got to be like, just, aren't you ever curious about what's under that rock over there? Let's just go take a look, Like, you got to egg people on a little bit, because they're afraid that something's going to happen. But trust me, nothing's going to happen by just being interested,
100%. And it's very encouraging. There's more and more people that are breaking out of that programming and starting to explore other possibilities. I think it's a lot more people than the establishment would like the world to know. I think more and more are popping in there every day. And, I'm very encouraged by the awareness that's kind of washing over everyone right now.
Yeah. So very quickly, let's get into Scott Pace and his experiences, because that's a very interesting part. And I'm sure there's more you could say about that than even what's in the documentary. I mean, he was incredible.
Oh, yeah. Scott Pace. So Scott Pace is a great guy. He is from a small town, South Louisiana. He's got a wife. He's got dogs, and he's a normal dude. He doesn't do drugs. He doesn't even drink. He goes and he enjoys hunting and fishing. And that was his life. He's never really been interested in anything paranormal, never did research, never thought about Bigfoot or anything until this one experience that led to many others. And he was out in hunting one day, and in his hunting blind, which is just like a little elevated space that's enclosed for you to wait for deer to appear. And that's what he was doing. And he looks out, and then I forget how far away it was. It wasn't too far, but he sees a figure moving in the woods, and it looks all black, and he can't really make out what it is. So he picks up his rifle and he looks through the scope at what the hell this is. And it stands up, and he says it's huge. It has to be like 8 foot tall. It's covered in black hair, black skin. And he said it looked like the only thing he could say is a Bigfoot. But then it gets crazier. He senses something else. He pans the gun over, and there is another huge, massive, hairy figure. This one was a little different, though. It had an elongated snout, wasn't as bulky, a little lankier. And he said it looked like a wolf man standing on 2 legs. He was freaking out. And all of a sudden, in his mind, he like hears speaking or communication. And he just knows somehow that it's coming from the Bigfoot. And the Bigfoot says something like, you need to put the gun down. And he can sense that the dog man's also communicating. He says, put the gun down, or I'm going to go up there and tear up the deer blind and kill you and all this stuff. And Scott doesn't know what to do, so he just tries thinking back. I'm not trying to hurt you. I was just looking. And apparently the Bigfoot agreed, yeah, just let him go. He was just looking at us. The communication continued, and then he hears this other loud voice say, get out now. So he did. He grabbed his stuff and he ran out of there. On his way out, he looks back and he sees, like he believes, maybe 3 or 4 figures, huge, massive figures following him out of the woods. He hears their footsteps, and he finally just makes it out of there and hightails it out of there. And that experience was crazy enough. But then after that, he starts having different kinds of encounters. At night, he starts like hearing tapping on his windows. He would look up and see eyes peering in at his tallest windows in his house. He also heard footsteps in his house. He would see footprints. Nothing would be there. Things would be moved around. And this just kept going, kept escalating. And then he'd go out into the woods and he would start getting this communication from something out there. They would never really show themselves like they did the first time. Every once in a while, he'd get glimpses of them. He said at night, they just appear as shadows, which is very strange. And it just kind of adds to the possibility that these creatures may have some sort of supernatural ability, or it may be supernatural in nature. I don't know, but the experiences continued. And at one point, he took a trip to, I forget what state it is right now. It's been so long since I covered it, but it was a little farther north in the United States, and I think it was Dakota, one of the Dakotas, but he went out there because one of his friends out there said that they're having all kinds of Bigfoot experiences and sightings. And he goes, and sure enough, his friend takes him out to the location. They see not only a massive Bigfoot like peeking out of the trees. They call him Stevie Wonder because he's kind of moving his head around like Stevie Wonder every time they see him looking at him. There's also they saw these little hairy creatures, which looked like miniature Bigfoots. He doesn't know if they were their children or just little people, but they also appeared. They started actually popping their heads out of the ground and crawling out of the ground. He said he witnessed this. He also witnessed with other people. He was out at night in one of these locations. He had his cell phone in his hand. They were sitting in his truck, and a huge, massive, black, hairy hand tried to grab his phone out of his hand. He slapped the hand away, and the creature just walked off like nothing. And one of the most incredible encounters he saw, they were all sitting out there, and all of a sudden, this beam of bright blue light shoots from the sky straight down and kind of widens open like a portal, I guess. And he said they were about 7 foot tall, pure luminescent light beings just walked out of the portal in front of their truck and down a hill in front of them like it was nothing. And they just watched this whole thing unfold, him and 2 or 3 other people. Again, the experiences still continue to this day. And now he's experiencing what he believes are extraterrestrial contact and abduction experiences at night. He has these vivid memories of being taken different places by tall, what he can only describe as gray extraterrestrial beings. He's seen the praying mantis beings. He says sometimes they're doing experiments on him. Sometimes it seems like they're teaching him, but these memories are not complete. And he sometimes wakes up in the morning with, blood coming out of his nose, scratches. And once he wakes up, it's very difficult for him to put everything together. But he does have these vivid memories, but he says they're not dreams. They are more like real memories and experiences. And I hear this a lot from extraterrestrial contactees and abductees. So it's very interesting, and his experiences continue. I have him on the podcast every once in a while. He said that most of the experiences have been very positive communication with the beings. He's a very religious man, so he brings his Bible out to the swamps and reads Bible verses to the Bigfoot and Sasquatch. He claims they enjoy that as well. So very strange and very extremely interesting. And I always look forward to hearing new experiences from him. So that was a very fun segment to cover for the film.
Wow, that's incredible. I would love to interview him.
Oh yeah, I'll get you his info. He loves going on shows and talking about
do
this
that,
stuff.
Because yeah, I mean, because he's such a real run-of-the-mill character, it makes him extremely believable,
Oh yeah. He's the most friendliest guy you ever met. He does not seem like he's got any screws loose in his head, and just your normal good old boy hunter from Louisiana that, like I said, never interested in any of this stuff, but now he just got sucked into it. So he can't deny it.
Yeah. Well, this has been a fascinating conversation. Do you have any closing thoughts? Anything you want anybody to know?
Well, I would like to say go watch the Forbidden documentary, Occult Louisiana. That's available on Tubi, Roku channel, and plenty other streaming platforms. By watching this, it helps us finish production of our upcoming film, the Forbidden documentary, Doors of Perception. Like I said, we're hoping to have this released by March or April. And we really appreciate everyone watching. We're thrilled with the success of the film so far. And I want to thank you again, Jahan, for having me on. And I'd definitely love to have more conversations in the future.
Fantastic. Chris, thanks for being on the Boundless Authenticity podcast. And hopefully we'll be talking again.
Yes, sir.
You're listening to the Boundless Authenticity Podcast, where we discuss everything related to the evolution of human consciousness.
At the very least, people need to understand that the United States builds bunkers, which are basically cities underground, every 3 months.
Basically, when you dream, you tap into your subconscious. It is your nocturnal intuition, your creativity and imagination unchained from conscious reason, ego and logic.
They're biologically alive, but they have no soul. They have AI consciousness. They can alter your conscious in the brain to get in the brain.
We live in a multidimensional reality, whether it comes through esoteric information in the spiritual realms or the UFO people, experiencers, or mainstream through quantum physics and through mainstream science now realizing that parallel dimensions probably exist.
We're all spiritual beings. We're all having these human experiences. We've heard that phrase over and over and over. But what does that really mean? You know, all the big questions of life, we have these answers inside of our souls.
We're ultimately studying the nature of what it is to be human, good and evil, our psychology, how we think, and our health. That's why I love Bruce Lee's great quote, all knowledge is ultimately self-knowledge.
The Boundless Authenticity Podcast.